When large jobs require moving massive amounts of snow, get the work done quickly and efficiently with the Western Pile Driver and all-new Pile Driver XL pusher plows, both featuring Trace Edge technology. These pushers scrape down to the pavement with an advanced cutting-edge system that has independent 2-foot sections that move vertically, oscillate, and trip. Get more jobs done faster with the Western Pile Driver lineup of pusher plows.
Mike Bott from Frost Solutions, one of the owners of the company. What we do is provide a mini weather station to give you a tailored forecast to those particular locations so you know where and when and what to do in those parts of town. You know there's 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 different ways that people can experience tremendous value having a technology like this.
Welcome to the Entrepreneurial Journey with your host, Dave Westcott. The Entrepreneurial Journey is a weekly podcast that streams live every Tuesday at 9:15 a.m. Pacific on Dave's YouTube channel and LinkedIn profile. Now here's Dave with this week's episode.
Good morning and welcome to the Entrepreneurial Journey. I'm your host, Dave Westcott, with co-host Pastor Dave Lundquist. And this morning we've got special guest, Steven Finke. Did I get that last name right?
Yes, you did. Steven Finke.
All right. Well, I'm sure glad I got it right because sometimes it doesn't happen. Together with their sons, Andrew and Samuel, they are missionaries to South America. They are headquartered in Medellin, Colombia, where they are pastors of a wonderful church and direct the church planting endeavor in the 9 Spanish-speaking countries in South America. Steve, I'm going to give you the full opportunity to pronounce the name of that church because I don't want it to go sideways on me.
No problem. Yeah, we plant churches and they're named Centro de Fe y Esperanza, Center of Hope and Faith.
That is awesome. You pronounced that so well. You made my Spanish speaking sound wonderful.
Yeah, I've had a little bit more practice.
A little bit more practice. You know, the Spanish speaking is really important here in the States. I'm a believer in this, and my goal is to have fluent Spanish speaking children. So
Yes.
They've been indoctrinated in Spanish lessons since they were, able to speak English, although I'm always disappointed in their progress. We are working on it. It is in progress, but I'll tell you that the Spanish speaking language is a big deal. And I saw a report. I don't know if it's true or not. I have no idea, but I was reading something like Forbes or something like that. And they were saying that, within the next 5 years, 3 out of every 5 homes sold in the U.S. will be to Spanish-speaking Americans.
Wow. Yeah.
And
wow.
I know that's how I feel too. It's kind of scary, right? But it's also, a reality that Spanish-speaking is a big deal.
Yeah. Yeah, it's for me, it was very easy because my parents came down to Colombia and then I was born here. So in the house, in our home, we spoke always English. And then I just grew up speaking Spanish with my friends and outside in the street. And so no conflict whatsoever learning that language for me. But now that my kids now have grown up underneath so much influence of Spanish, it's been a challenge even having them speak English as their first language.
Really? You know what? That's good though. That's not a bad thing. So Medellin, that sounds like a rough area. That's like a Pablo Escobar, I don't know, drug cartel type area is what it sounds like to me. That's just from the outside looking in, but it sounds like the name of that city has been on quite a few TV shows.
It has. Yes, it has. Years back, Medellin, because of the drug cartels, Pablo Escobar and all the drug cartels, was actually, named one of the most violent cities in the world. Wow. That was, years back. I was a youth pastor. We had a large youth group here, over 1,200 youth. And there was so much violence, and we were affecting so many young people around the neighborhoods and around the city that, we're coming out of drugs, we're coming out of, so much violence and gangs and, just sicario groups or hitman groups, that actually we went to more funerals being youth ministers than the adult pastors would, because there was just so much violence. But God has really brought a tremendous transformation to Medellin, and it's a beautiful city. And a lot of people say that the only danger of coming to Medellin now is that you want to come back or you want to stay. So there you go.
Really?
Yeah.
That's amazing.
That's pretty cool.
Hey, Steven, so you are doing church planting now. Tell us a little bit about what that means. I mean, you've gone from being in one church and now you're planting churches all across the nation, and really beyond that. Tell us a little bit about that, why that's important.
Well, church planting is a tremendous opportunity because, Lester Summerall, great preacher, evangelist, said, if you plant a church, you will live from the fruits of it the rest of your life. And it's not talking just the financial fruits, of course. It's talking about how when a church is planted, it will continue to grow. It will continue to affect in all the different ministries. It will continue to, win people to the Lord. So for us, church planting is not just a strategy, but it's, something that we carry in our DNA, because we believe it's just a way that we can, reach people, transform society, bring healing to families and to villages and to cities, the most effective way that we can do it as Christians. So my dad, when he was a missionary to Mexico for 8-9 years and planted churches there, then came down to Medellin, and he was also a pilot. And so he would go with his, small Cessna airplane into villages, raise up pastors and leaders, plant churches. He did it through a lot of radio programs that he had. And he planted over 250 churches here in Colombia. And then he started to carry out that vision to all South America. And so when I came around and came out of Bible school, I started to grab that same vision that God had placed on his life. And then when he passed away, we just continued, my wife and I continued, going forth with what God has just put on our lives. So I planted churches, and our church has planted many churches. We have a Christian school here, but our passion is to be able to plant churches, dynamic, just vibrant churches in all of South America.
Well,
That's awesome. Oh, go ahead, Dave.
I was just going to say that, for a lot of our listeners, the idea of planting a church might seem really strange, but the statistics are pretty incredible, the impact of what a church does in a community. Not only does it have a direct, economic impact on that community by gathering people and creating an economic engine, but statistics are pretty incredible in that, it contributes to, decrease in crime, which sounds like it's happening, and deviance, promotes, mental health and physical health by bringing people in. Matter of fact, statistics are that church people live 7 years longer than non-church people, and they are healthier because they aren't involved in a lot of the vices, that destroy people. And lastly, just the social cohesiveness, binding generations together, young and old, providing, youth groups, like you said, 1,200, in a youth group, to providing for the old. So planting churches is an incredible way to transform society because it transforms people. So, for those people who are listening, they're going, well, why would we plant churches? Man, it changes the world. And I love that that's what you guys are doing.
Yeah, and in a society and different areas where, sometimes in the States we're used to having mini churches.
Yeah.
but in areas where there is no churches being planted, and in a time where there is such a need for like a moral compass.
Yeah.
Where is our society going to get a moral compass? It's not going to be just from politicians or different social programs. It has to be through through men and women, that their lives are healed and transformed, and then they can really go out to the society and bring something positive, because God has done that in their own life. So it's a tremendous multiplication, and that's our vision. It's not just to just build stuff. Actually, the model that we have is through relationships. We're not really so much interested in building, cathedrals or buildings. What we really want to do is work with the people, connect them to a purpose that they have in the Lord and in their life, bring healing to their family, structure to their family, and just that they also can be effective to help other families in their society, their neighbor, their family, their co-workers, and just bring hope and just direction and healing to the people around them.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yes.
I love that. How many churches can you plant in a year?
That's a very interesting question, Dave. Well, last year, now we've been doing this for now in South America for now over 20 years. My dad started up, and he started consolidating teams, and we truly believe in teamwork, networking, and so this has been going on for a while. But last year alone, our teams in all of the 9 Spanish-speaking countries, so everyone except for Brazil, we planted over 1,300 churches just last year alone.
Wow, that's
this
incredible.
This year from January, February, March, the first quarter, we planted 433 churches just this year. So we're just seeing a tremendous multiplication of new churches. Now, this isn't, this has been a movement is something that takes time, and we're a church planting movement. We're not a denomination or an organization. What we are is a church planting movement, and movements take time and consistency. And so we're just seeing the fruit of many years of, leadership, of casting the vision. And I believe it's just a time of opportunity that God has given us, really, where the doors are opening up in all these nations to train new church planters to go out to areas that maybe do not have a church yet, or don't have enough churches to go and plant vibrant churches.
Wow. So tell us about, a church. What does a church consist of? Is it, 3 or 4 people gathering together, or is it a building, or what does it mean to plant a church?
Well, David, that's a great question, because it's, sometimes when we think of a church, we think of a building. But really, the definition of the church assembly is people that have the same beliefs and are going after the same goal, just come together underneath, a roof, or underneath, a town square, in a town square, or underneath a tree. But for us, a church is called the church after there's 35 members that are, committed, baptized, and are walking with the Lord. So it's not just a group of people. The way that we get to that number, just to start it off as a church, is that most of these leaders and church planters go out and start small groups within the community, and through relationship, as they have open doors and as they preach and continue to share the gospel, then that's how they, when they have 2, 3, 4 small groups, once they have around 35 and up people that are baptized and that are committed, then they come together, and that is what we consider the starting of a church.
Wow. Wow. So go ahead, Dave.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say, so 435 times 35, I mean, that's, 15,000 something, or 150,000.
No,
That's
it's so like last year, we planted over 1,300 churches, and most of those churches now are averaging around 70 to 80 people. And so we have affected around 80,000 people just last year alone. People that are coming into the church, their lives are being restored, their families are being restored, relationships are being restored, and then they're going out to their village or to their society and also bringing, God's love and bringing hope to these different countries. So yeah, it's a tremendous multiplication, and that's just 1 year, and they'll continue to grow. And over 50% of the churches that were planted last year and this year, over 50% of them within 2 years will plant another church out of that new church. So we are expecting to be able to reach over 1 million people in the next 4 years through what God is doing in church planting.
wow.
In that area of the world, all of the, I don't know, it's a rougher part of the world than it is in the United States, it seems like. But, one of the questions I think that always comes up is, when bad things happen and people don't see God, and then they go to a minister and they ask, hey, my mom died of cancer at 15 years old. How can a good God allow that to happen? How can there be a God if we're praying for her to, be okay and be healed and nothing happens and she just dies? As ministers, how do you answer that question?
Yeah, that's a good question there, Dave, because sometimes we judge God a lot of times throughout our own humanity. But when we understand that God has given us something amazing, which is amazing and is a tremendous responsibility, which is free will, and we understand that the problems of the world are the result of really a fallen world. When Adam sinned, the Word of God said that sin came in to the world, and with sin came sickness and came destruction and death and wars and all what we're seeing right now. And if God would take all those things away, there wouldn't be a need to have free will. We would automatically be drawn to whatever he had set up. But the way that the world is, it's just a tremendous opportunity that we have to either decide what kind of life we're going to live. If we're going to live a life that goes down this path or this other path that God has placed in front of us, but we decide. And so when we understand that God is a tremendous loving God, and it's not, it's not his will that there's separation from him. There's not his will that there is, just tremendous need in our families. But he wants to come in and to restore. That's just the message really of the gospel. And when we open up our lives to the Lord, then that healing, that restoration, that forgiveness comes in, and we get to choose to receive it or not to receive it.
Sure. Yeah, and I'd also just add to that, we all live, in our little world, and we want our world to be perfect and fair. And it's, for someone who lost a mom, what do? You love them. You care for them. You come around them, and you say, you know what? It is hard. Life is hard. Life is unfair. And that's, like Steven said, because of sin and a broken world. But life is not just ends at life and death. It is an eternal process. And there will be restoration. There will be a setting right of creation. I think all of us yearn for that in our hearts, and we know that's, things are broken. God will set it back into its right order. And even though we face trials and brokenness today, there is hope for our tomorrow and for eternity. And that is, like Steven said, by submitting ourselves to God, opening up our hearts and minds and seeing things from an eternal perspective, not from a moment to moment perspective. Every hard thing is hard, battle is hard, but I think all of us learn that we walk through things and we can look behind and see that there's beauty, and this season is, we're living in a season of sin and brokenness, but there is also provision in Jesus.
Yeah, that's true.
I'm a believer in that. When I think of just looking at all of the growth that you guys have had, 1,300 churches, that's a lot of growth. How do you train the trainers? What does that process look like?
So we strongly believe in relationships and teams. So throughout the years in every country, we have raised up team members, and then they and themselves have multiplied that vision into other team leaders that have the experience of planting churches, maybe have churches underneath them, and then through those churches come out the new candidates. So we're just not doing trainings for anyone that wants to come. We have a process of identifying, then selecting, then training, then going out and planting churches. And then after that church is planted, the fifth process is multiplication. So everything starts up with identifying, people that, that have that desire in their hearts, that really want to be used by the Lord to affect other people. Leaders, leadership is influence, and there's so many ways that we can influence people around us. But I think that we identify in the churches, underneath the teams that we have, men and women that have that desire, what we call the calling on their lives, and then really just walk into risking themselves to this endeavor. Planting a church is not easy. It's easy to talk about 1,300 churches, but it's not easy to be that church planter in that village in Brazil, in Bolivia, or in Peru, or in Argentina. But this is something that God puts on their hearts. And so after we identify them, then we select them so that we bring them in and start working on them. And that might take, maybe 1, 2, 3 years, where they're growing in their leadership, where they're growing in their, just influence, where they can grow in also their biblical training. And then we'll come in and have a training in an area. So just last weekend, we were in Bogota. And Bogota is a capital city here of Colombia, over 12 million people. And we had a training of 185 pastors and church planters. So we'll come in and for 2 days, we will just train. We'll give them the strategy, the vision, how to start, how to maintain, and then they'll go out and they'll launch their new church. So through that, because of that training, right now, 45 church planters right now this month will be starting small groups, And once they get to around 35, 40 people, then that church will be, consolidated as a new church plant. So it's something that is happening constantly. At the same time that we had a training in Bogota, our leader, Jonathan, in Peru, had another one with 160 people there in Peru. So it's after we train them, they go out and plant churches, and then they plant a church with the mentality of multiplication, that through their discipleship, through them working with and building their own teams, maybe in 1 or 2 years, they'll have mature Christians that are able to go out and to plant other churches from this new church.
So it's really a mentor model all the way through.
Definitely. Yeah, our model is not, massive programs or meetings. Our success that we've seen, by the grace of God, has been through relationship, mentoring, raising up spiritual sons and daughters.
Great.
How does this impact the local community? Like we talked at the beginning, Pablo Escobar, all the violence, all of that sort of thing over the last, 35, 40 years, it's calmed down quite a bit. But how do these churches impact the local community and really make it a better place to live?
Well, I think the first thing is being able to give the community what is really their need. So many times we think that our need is getting more money or getting more opportunities or having a happy family. And all those things are good. But really, every one of us has a spiritual void, a need that only, through a relationship with God, we can fill. This is something that we're created that way. And so when we come into a society or a community that has so much violence or so much addiction, the church comes in with a message of hope and saying, hey, that you've been looking for, that nothing has really been able to satisfy you, we know someone that can satisfy your heart. And that comes through a relationship with Jesus Christ. So everything starts off, first of all, through, reaching the true need of humanity, which is something more than just outside needs, but it's something spiritual that we have. But then also the church ministers to the social needs. So most of these churches will have outreaches for the poor, outreaches for the widows, outreaches for children. A lot of the churches have, breakfast tables where a lot of the kids in their community, depending, what country and everything, but many of the kids go to school with hunger. And so they'll open up areas of serving the community and showing just God's love to the community. So it's spiritual, and then it's also social. It's bringing the true need and fulfillment of the true need that we have, which is through a relationship with God, but then also investing in every one of those areas, depending on what is the need of that village or that neighborhood. And part of the training that we give is, hey, when you go and plant a church, you need to, first of all, find out where you want to plant it. And second of all, do an analysis of what's going on in that neighborhood. What's going on? What social problems are they having? And so every country is different. Every town is different. But the churches bring hope, bring healing, and then also bring help in the social areas of those communities.
Yeah, I love it.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah. Steve, just very quickly, how big do these churches grow?
It kind of depends. So I think I sent you a video, David, of what happened last year in just a small part of Peru, and that's a 3 or 8 minute video. There's 2 of them, but that kind of just shows. But some of those churches are in very small villages that you can see there. We're talking about 5 hours in the jungles of Peru. It took our video team 5 hours to get into the place where we met Angel. Now, Angel, he started a church last year. He came through our training, and now he has 45 people in his church. Now, that doesn't seem very large, but the place where he's at in the jungle areas of Peru, everyone walks around, an hour and a half to get to his church. So, and there's there's maybe 3-4 houses around his church, and that's all. The rest is just farmlands. It's an area where they plant a lot of cocoa plants for making chocolate, and so that's what they are. But then also, I here in Easter, I was speaking at one of the churches in Buenos Aires. They have 1,300, 1,400 people in their church, and that was a church plant that Gustavo, received the training, received part of our mentoring and help, and now Gustavo's church is over 1,000, and that was 15 years ago. Wow. So it all kind of depends the pastor. It depends what the population is. But for us, the number is not the goal, in the sense that we want to reach as many people as we can, and that is the goal. But some people, their leadership will be for a smaller church, or their leadership will be for a larger church. But the most important is that they're going out there and really doing what God has placed on their hearts.
Yeah, that's awesome. I love it. I think, from my perspective, as we bring this for a close, is, as an entrepreneur, as a business owner, I think we have this duty, this responsibility to use the resources that God has blessed us with to help change the world. That's our mission, change the world. And I believe that in areas like South America, or in North America, or in Australia, or Russia, or China, wherever it is, whatever continent we're on, there's always pain, and there's always heartbreak, and there's always disappointment and loss, and there's always tough moments that go on. And I think that as a business, if we focus on raising those up around us, if we focus on donating to charitable organizations, donating to churches, donating to organizations that are helping to change the world, then our business is more than just making a profit and providing a service. We're changing the world. We're making things better for many, many different people. And those dollars, as they go overseas, have more and more of an impact. They go further, they do more. I noticed that it's like, up to $3,500 to sponsor a church for a year. That's an amount of money that can support a church for an entire year. For many entrepreneurs, that's not a lot of money. That's pretty simple to be able to dig in and say, hey, let me support this church. And I believe as business owners, as entrepreneurs, we have a responsibility to do something more than just buy another boat, or to buy a bigger house, or to buy more clothes, or just, you can't, you don't see a U-Haul behind a casket, you know what I mean, or however that saying goes. So I think there's a great opportunity that we have as entrepreneurs. And so I would encourage the entrepreneurs listening to this show. Why do we have something like this on the show? We have it on the show because it's about giving back. It's about changing the world. If we don't do our job, if we don't take care of our communities, our world, our regions, then what's the point in even being in business? And that's why we like to highlight these particular things. I'd like to throw out there a match. that, we'll sponsor 2 of these churches for a year. So throw that out there. They can do this through mBridge.global, and we'll sponsor 2 if someone wants to come along and match 2. I know that's nothing in the grand scheme of 1,300 churches, but base hits equal home runs. And so we'd love to get that sponsorship. We'd love to get that going. That's what I've got, and I really appreciate the time. Any final thoughts, Steven or David?
Well, yeah, Dave, I think the opportunity of, like you said, to really impact people is something that we all have to be open to do. And there's a tremendous return when you plant a church. Now, all these churches that we planted last year, not all of them were funded, because it's just such a tremendous growth. And, the churches will be planted with funding or without funding, but being part of this is something amazing. Like a couple of months back, we sponsored a training. It was, 54 people were in that training. It cost us $700. And out of those 54 planters that were trained, that month, 27 of them went out to plant churches. So the return of what God is doing and being able to invest in what's going on is something amazing. But yeah, thank you, Dave, for just this time and this opportunity to share the awesome things that are going down here in South America.
Just in conclusion, if anybody wants to give, all they need to do is type into their phone In One at 44321. So that's In One at 44321. It'll be in the show notes. We'll have that for you, as well as information about In One Ministries and what Steven is doing in South America. So yeah, excited to be able to do a match and encourage all those people out there, give a little bit, give a lot, and let's see, communities transformed, lives transformed.
Let's do it. This was a fantastic show, Steven. Steven, thank you so much for joining us today. Join us next week, 9:15 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. Every single week, we're here with the Entrepreneurial Journey. I'm your host, Dave Westcott. Follow me on LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, anywhere it's social, YouTube. I'm hanging out. And leave your comments in the comment box. And like I said, if you like us, give us a like, give us a share us on your social network. Outside of that, have a great day and help us change the world.
Amen. Yep.
Mike Bott from Frost Solutions, one of the owners of the company. What we do is provide a mini weather station to give you a tailored forecast to those particular locations, so you know where and when and what to do in those parts of town. There's 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 different ways that people can experience tremendous value having a technology like this.
Introducing the all-new Western Enforcer V-Plow. Engineered with all the features, efficiency, and performance of full-size Western V-Plows, built specifically for your half-ton truck. For more information, visit westernplows.com.